of abroad, especially now when the UK is about leaving the European Union. Kathy will answer our questions at the end of her presentation. I know there are many EURES advisors wanting to ask many questions today. And I don't want to spend more time because you have many things to tell us. So, Kathy, I'll give you the floor. Come on.
Hello, everyone. Thank you to Miguel Angel, Anna, and all the team from Spain. I hope you can hear me. It's clear? Yes?
Could you speak a bit aloud, please?
Okay, can you hear me now? Is that better?
Better,
okay.
Better.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today. It's always great to work with the Spanish EURES team, and we have a great cooperation between the two countries. I have some information about living and working in Ireland, which may be helpful to any of you who are interested in moving to Ireland to take up a job. I think Mar has the presentation. If she'd like to open it, we can begin. Can you share the presentation? Okay, here we go. So this is some pictures from our beautiful country. And next slide, we have a map. Just to give you an idea where we are, right on the edge of Europe. And if you go to the next one, you can see that Ireland is politically divided into two parts. The Republic is in green, it's made up of 26 counties, and the northern area, made up of 6 counties and coloured in red, is part of the United Kingdom. So that part of Ireland will be leaving the EU at the end of this year, but the remainder of Ireland will remain in the EU. If you go to the next slide, please, Mark. This is just to give you an idea of how Ireland is made up. We have our capital city, Dublin, is on the east coast. And we have a few small cities around the country, Galway on the west coast, and Limerick southwest, Cork in the south, and Waterford in the southeast. And the remainder of the country is made up of smaller towns and villages. We're quite a rural country. Next slide shows you the population. We have just under 5 million people living in Ireland, and 2.36 million people were working at the end of 2019. And in the second quarter of this year, 2.22 million people are still in employment. Our unemployment rate in January this year was under 5%, so we had a very low unemployment rate, and we were an incoming country for workers. In September this year, our unemployment rate has risen to 5.4%, mainly due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We are a country that has a lot of immigration and emigration. So a lot of our people, our young people, like to leave Ireland to find a work experience in other countries and to travel. It's not happening this year, as for everybody in Europe and around the world, but that is something that our young people love. The next slide shows you about our labour market factors. So we have a young, highly educated workforce. We have probably the youngest workforce in the EU. We have quite a bit of emigration, as I explained. English is the main language in Ireland. We do speak Irish and we study it at school, but English is the language that everybody speaks. We do have national wage agreements, so that can be very important for anybody coming to work in Ireland, that they know that there are minimum wages for different sectors. And the national minimum wage for everybody is €10.10 per hour. So nobody is allowed to be paid less than €10.10 per hour. But many people, of course, are paid more than that under other wage agreements. What's ahead of us in 2021, we really don't know because of COVID-19 and the impact of Brexit. Brexit is going to have quite an impact on Ireland because we are the nearest neighbour and they are a big trading country for Ireland. So we have to wait and see what kind of deal comes out of Brexit, and we also have to wait and see what happens next with COVID-19. But I suppose lots of countries are in similar. Okay, Mark, thank you. So you can see the trends in unemployment in Ireland. Since 2012, we had a rate of almost 15%, but that has gradually reduced, and in January this year, less than 5%, which is almost full employment. Unfortunately, COVID-19 is impacting on that quite a bit. So our adjusted figures for COVID-19 unemployment, we're nearly back up at 15%. We hope that that's a temporary situation, and we really hope that those numbers will reduce significantly over the coming weeks and months. At the moment, our country is at a level 5 lockdown, which means that most businesses are actually closed. So the level of unemployment obviously is quite high at the moment. But we do have some very good government supports if people are out of work. They get paid something between 200 and 350 euros per week while the business is closed. That depends on the income that they had when they were working. So people are supported very well at the moment and they receive the payment very quickly. So the next slide, Mark, please. So what opportunities are available in Ireland? Well, our labour market is very strong, really, and it has been strengthening over the last number of years. But due to the pandemic, we have had quite a change because in 2019 and 2020, there were skills shortages across all sectors: IT, science, healthcare, hospitality, engineering, business and financial, construction, operatives, all skilled trades, sales and customer service with language skills. So as you can imagine, with only 5% unemployment, there was a lot of skills shortages. But what is the outlook now? We'll move to the next slide. So for science and engineering occupations, they do forecast a fall of almost 10%, or 9,200 persons in that sector in 2020. We do expect a swift recovery in the manufacturing sector, and we hope that that will reduce other drops in employment in that sector. IT occupations, there's going to be a very small decline in those because the increase in roles for programmers and developers, lots of people working from home, using Zoom, all these other IT systems, and that's creating employment in this country. So the fallout from COVID-19 in the IT sector should be very small. For business and financial occupations, as a result of COVID-19, there's an expected to fall by about 6%. Now, if we move on to the next slide, healthcare occupations, there's a huge demand for healthcare services in Ireland, and this is going to grow, not just because of the pandemic, but also because of Ireland's aging demographics. So we're getting older, we're living longer, and we need more healthcare. So there is going to be a continuous need for all kinds of healthcare professionals in Ireland. Education opportunities, we don't really expect those to change. In fact, there may be some increases due to the pandemic. We've realized that we need more teachers. So we don't expect there to be a huge drop in this sector. We expect it to have probably one of the smallest drops of all sectors due to the pandemic. In transport and logistics, well, a lot of that is affected by retail. So it depends really on how quickly our retail sector recovers from the COVID-19 restrictions. And also international travel restrictions affect this sector. But we do expect that it will pick up quickly, but there could be a forecasted fall of about 9,500 people from that sector Brexit will also impact on the transport and logistics sector. So we don't know what the outcome from that is going to be. If we look at hospitality in the next slide, hospitality, as all across the world, is probably the most impacted sector. So we have forecasted a fall of about 40% in our hospitality, or about 66,000 people will probably move out of hospitality positions over the next couple of months. We don't know if it will pick up quickly or will take more time to recover, but it is certainly the most impacted sector from the COVID-19 pandemic. Sales and marketing and customer service applications, again, they are impacted by COVID-19, and there is a forecast of a 12% drop in this sector. In construction, our construction sector had built up to quite a high level. We expect about an 11% drop from 2019 figures, but already we have a lot of initiatives by the government to help to improve this sector and to keep it going. So if we come along then to looking for work in Ireland in the next slide, the Department of Social Protection has 60 intra-centres throughout the country. And the intra-centre is where you go for services, information and advice for job seekers and unemployed, and also for information on training for unemployed. You can search for jobs on our National Public Employment Services website, Jobs Ireland, and there are many private sites such as jobs.ie, irishjobs.ie. There's a long list, but you can find jobs in Ireland on all of those. And of course, the EURES website, euresireland.ie and eures.europa.eu. And you can find living and working information from all the countries on the EURES portal. The next slide. So we also have many private recruitment agencies in Ireland. The National Recruitment Federation website will lead you to those recruitment agencies. They do not charge job seekers, and you should never pay a recruitment company, because they charge the employer, and they charge the employer between 12 and 20% of the first year's salary. So if you do go to a recruitment company, and many people do, make sure that you don't pay any fee to them. And the next slide, about qualifications recognition. It's very important to have your qualifications from Spain verified and compared with the similar qualification in Ireland. And you can do that through our Quality and Qualifications Ireland website, QQI. It's the Irish Centre for the Recognition of International Qualifications. You can send an email, there are contact details there, and you can also find similar qualifications that compare to your Spanish qualifications. So you can be able to tell an employer where your qualification lies in the framework of qualifications. The authority represents Ireland in a European network of centres known as ENIC-NARIC, and there's a free online advice on foreign qualifications. It's very useful for anyone wanting to compare what they have, the qualification they've achieved in Spain to an Irish qualification. Next one, Mara, thank you. So before you go, you should always contact your local EURES advisor before you leave your country. You should seek pre-departure advice on living and working issues. We always recommend that you contact a EURES advisor in the country, and perhaps in the area in that country that you wish to move to. Send them an email. You'll find their email addresses on the EURES portal. Send them an email, send them a copy of your CV, ask them whatever questions you need about living and working in the area, and they will give you as much help as they possibly can. And they will give you links and information to local employers and services. Make sure to bring your relevant documentation with you. Your e-forms, your European health insurance card is most important. Don't leave home without it. You should speak at least basic English, and you need to have somewhere to stay on arrival. Now, in normal times, we'd say stay with a friend or relative, or maybe go to a hostel. But during COVID-19, that's a little bit more difficult. You have to be aware that if you arrive in Ireland, you must restrict your movements for 14 days. Everybody must do this. So you have to find somewhere where you can restrict your movements and keep a distance from other people. You'll have to discuss this with your employer is the best way to do it, because they will mostly help you in that area. So it's always better to have a job before you leave your country, and your employer can advise you. Now, that strict condition may change. There may be testing available at airports, and it may not continue. But for the moment, anyone arriving in Ireland, including Irish citizens, are required to restrict their movements for 14 days. Okay, next, and always you need to bring enough money with you to sustain yourself for at least a short period. So in our next slide, what do you need to do? Can we move to the next? Yes, thank you. So what do you need to do on arrival in Ireland? The first thing you need to do is get a personal public services number. You can do that through your local intro office. As I said, there are 60 of them throughout the country. And you need this number to register for all services, including social welfare and revenue. So if you're starting a job, you need a personal public services number. Now, generally you need a face-to-face interview in order to get this number, but you can book an appointment online. Just checking. Yes, you can book an appointment before you leave your country, so long as you have a reason for getting the PPSN. You will be given an appointment and you will get your number. It's important to get this as quickly as possible because it has an implication on your taxes. People who move to Ireland for the first time and don't have a tax-free allowance certificate, they have to wait until that is sorted. And while they're waiting, they pay emergency tax. So emergency tax is paid at a higher rate than the regular tax. So you have to be aware that you may have to pay emergency tax for a short period. This means that your take-home pay would be reduced for a short period when you arrive. So be prepared for that. It can take 2 to 3 weeks to get your tax-free allowance sorted. You need to open a bank account, and for this you'll need an introduction letter from an employer, and that letter should have the exact name that's on your passport. So make sure that that's the name that they use. Oops, I'm sorry, my phone is ringing here. Then you'd also need proof of address. That could be from an employer. Usually it's from a utility bill, but if you haven't lived in Ireland, you won't have that. So from an employer, a letter from an employer will suffice to confirm your address, or the landlord. So what kind of rents will you be paying if you arrive in Ireland? Cost of living in Ireland is quite high. A 1-bedroom apartment in Dublin will cost €1,000 a month, in Cork 800, and in Galway 800. A 2-bedroom apartment will cost you €1,500 in Dublin, 1,300 in Cork, and 980 in Galway. So as you can see, it's always cheaper to share accommodation. You can find more information on sites such as daft.ie and myhome.ie. You can find rental accommodation. In some cities, it is not that easy to find rental accommodation. It may take a little while to find suitable accommodation. Okay, and in our next slide, just to be aware that landlords will usually require a 1 month's rent in advance. They'll generally require 1 year's lease, and rental agreements are legal. It is very common in Ireland to share accommodation, and you can, in daft.ie, you can click on a sharing option. So you can look for shared, a room in a shared house. Most people live in houses, usually 3-bedroom houses, and a group of people will share. Okay, and we're getting near to the end of the presentation. So what does Ireland have to offer you? Well, we do still have quite a number of vacancies. We have a good quality of life. We have a temperate climate, and I'm looking out the window right now and it is pouring rain, so be prepared for quite a bit of rain in Ireland. But our country wouldn't be beautifully green if we didn't get the rain. We're an English-speaking country. Irish is spoken in some areas, but for work, English is essential, and a good level of English can make a huge difference in getting a job in Ireland. At least a B1 level of English is required for most jobs. There's many young people. As I said, we have the youngest population in Europe. We have lots of interest from football, our own sport, Gaelic games, golf, fishing, rugby, music, theatre, cinema, all of those things. So there's a good quality of life in Ireland for those of you who would like to come and join us here. Thank you very much. We've reached the end of the presentation. Gura mahagat, that's the Irish for thank you. I'm delighted to have had the opportunity to speak to you today. So if you have questions for me, I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you, Kathy. It's time for questions.
Okay.
If you let me, I'm going to ask the first one. Sometimes we promote vacancies, especially Irish vacancies, on a radio station from Madrid. And the interviewer usually asks, it is possible to live in Ireland with this salary? And my answer usually is, it depends on the candidate's needs, obviously. But if the employer offers this salary, it means that the employee can live in Ireland. Otherwise, the worker would leave the company immediately. My question is, what is the minimum salary you consider it's indispensable to live in Ireland? I don't mean in Dublin, Cork, Galway, just in towns as Waterford, Wexford, even Mullingar. Of course, sharing a hut, or a flat or a house.
Miguel, the minimum wage of €10.10 per hour, that is the minimum that you would need. Mm-hmm. You couldn't live on less than that. And that's the reason that that amount has been specified. Okay, if we look at some organizations, they would say that €12 per hour is a reasonable income. But at €10.10 at the minimum wage, it is possible to live on this wage because many, many people in this country live on this wage. They also, we have other benefits that help people who are on a lower wage. So we have a scheme for families with children that they can get an increase every week, a payment from the government if the wages are low, depending on the number of children that they have. Also, every family, regardless of income, receives child benefit. And that's I think it's €140 per month for each child. So we have other supports that help families to live if the wages are low. So €10.10 per hour for a family of 1 is very comfortable. For a family of 4, you will need help. And the government will provide this help.
So people in general can make money, but they can survive.
Yes. They won't save anything or very much, but they can have a reasonable quality of life.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
We'll try to group the questions because there are a lot of them, so that we can save time.
Yes, if I can, I'm Nacho here from EURES in Badajoz. I have collected some questions from the chat. So, for example, we have one here asking about opportunities on teaching field. Okay, I am a teacher, can speak English and Chinese. Is there any work for teachers? This is one of the questions.
Okay, there are jobs for teachers. Chinese isn't a very common subject, but it is. There is a certain level of interest in Chinese in some schools, but a very small number. The issue with teaching in Ireland, we have two levels, as you do, the primary level and the secondary level. Primary school teachers must teach Irish. So it's very difficult for non-Irish people to work in a primary school because a third of the curriculum must be through Irish. But for secondary school level, you have to register with the teaching council. So your degree, once it's accepted, you can apply for a position in Ireland. So the teaching council, if you go onto their website, if you even put it in your browser, the Teaching Council of Ireland, you'll get the website and you can see how to register yourself as a teacher in Ireland. The level of English that you have would be very important for working in a school in Ireland. You would need to have really an A level of English if you're going to work as a teacher in a school in Ireland.
Okay,
hello,
thank you very much.
This is Mar from Palencia. Kathy, there is another question about the social care workers. Are there any opportunities there?
For social care, yes, there are. We have a number of, what would you call them? Homes for children. And they are constantly looking for social care workers at different levels. So everything from assistants to higher levels. And we see ads for advertisements for those positions regularly. So if somebody is interested in working in that, we'd be happy to receive a CV from them.
We have one more question about sectors. IT sector. I think that there is a strong necessity there in Ireland. They ask about Dublin, Belfast. However, I think it's very required in the whole country. Is it?
Yes, Dublin, Belfast obviously is not in the Republic of Ireland, it's in the UK, so it will be leaving Europe, the EU at the end of the year. But Dublin, Cork, also Galway, all of those cities have a lot of positions in IT. We have a lot of the big companies, Apple, Google, Facebook, all based in Dublin. So there are a lot of IT roles. Apple is also based in Cork. So, you know, there's quite a range of positions in those companies.
Thank you, Kathy. We have also questions about qualifications and titles. Our job seekers are asking about if the Spanish titles are valid to perform there in Ireland. So I think there are some difference between regulated professions or not regulated professions.
Yes. So generally speaking, a degree from Spain is equivalent to a degree in Ireland, because they're all done under the EU agreement to have similar qualifications throughout the EU. So that's not really an issue. but in the professions, particularly medical professions, those kind of professions, you have to register with a governing body in the country. And they will check the regulations and the practical work that you have done and decide if it meets the standard. But generally speaking, it meets the standard. We rarely have a problem where the qualification doesn't meet the standard. The problem we usually have is that there is an English language requirement for many positions, and that level is very high. It's a C in the IELTS, it's a 7 in the IELTS, or the Occupational English exam. So that can be the biggest problem, is achieving the level of English required.
Are there any opportunity for telecommunication engineers?
Oh, I'm not sure. I suppose there are, Miguel. I'm not aware of any big number of vacancies in this area, but there's a lot of work going on in the country in this area, so I guess there must be opportunities also. But we can find out for your questioner, if they would like us to send them some information, we can find out.
At the least, you can need one of them, because your difficulties to connect this device this morning.
Unfortunately, I don't pay very well.
You can hire one telecommunication engineer.
Well, jokes apart, we have many more questions about sectors: environmental sector, aviation sector, pharmaceutical sector, administrative assistants. Chat is right now very hot with these questions.
Okay. Well, pharmaceutical sector is very big in Ireland. We have huge biopharma sector. There are opportunities in that sector. You mentioned administration, not so much in administration, because there are many people in Ireland who are interested in that kind of work and are qualified in that area. So it's not so easy to get administrative work. The other sectors you mentioned, can you tell me?
Yeah, I repeat.
Physiotherapists.
Pharmaceutical, internal auditors, tourism also,
video game,
environmental. There's a lot.
Designers.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I suppose we do have a broad range of vacancies in the country now. And if you look on any of the job websites, particularly the two that are in the presentation, and you can click on the sector that you're interested in, but you will see a lot of vacancies for those positions. Now, in hospitality and tourism right now is not a good time. Hopefully, after COVID-19, whenever we move away from this horrible pandemic, that sector will become very busy again. But right now, it's in a crisis. But pharmaceutical and biopharma, for sure. Environmental positions, we expect there will be quite a few more positions in this area over the coming years, because now we have a Green Party as part of our government. So we think the environmental agenda will become bigger over the next couple of years. And I'm looking at things like renewable energies, wind farms, solar farms, those kind of things are becoming very popular now. Also water quality, air quality, all of those kind of things are becoming very, very important.
Kathy, somebody is claiming for the return of Spanish doctors. Are there many doctors, Spanish doctors, working in Ireland right now?
I'm not sure, Miguel. I would say there are some, but I don't think they are the majority of doctors. working in Ireland right now. But unfortunately, even though I deal with the healthcare sector, recruitment of doctors seems to be completely done by recruitment agencies, large recruitment healthcare agencies. So it's not something I'm sure about. Mm-hmm. But if they're here, we're going to try and keep them.
I don't think there are many doctors, because in the last years we have tried to recruit doctors from Spain, but we weren't able to do that.
Yeah.
There is another question about non-EU citizens that has a permission of work in Spain or in another country. Can they go to Ireland to work, or they need a special permission or something like that?
If they are not EU citizens and they only have permission to work in Spain or in Schengen, then they don't automatically have permission to work in Ireland. They would need an employment permit. And for a lot of sectors, it's difficult to get an employment permit. And it's quite expensive for a company to get an employment permit. So they generally will only take somebody if there is a big shortage of that skill in Ireland. At the moment, for example, healthcare assistants, there's a big shortage, but they're not on the critical skills list. So it's not possible to get an employment permit for somebody with that qualification. So it can be difficult, unfortunately, for people who are not EU citizens to work in Ireland.
We have many questions. For example, the last one, I think it's very important about online job. I think it is regarding telework. We don't know if you have regulation about it, or if you have vacancies to do the job through these systems.
We do expect that there will be more of this, because the one thing the pandemic has made us realize is that we need to connect more through internet for all kinds of things, work and for job interviews. Everything is being done on Skype and on Zoom and all of these platforms. But we were talking in EURES Ireland about the possibility of providing some information, gathering some companies together who are interested in having workers living in another country but working for them in Ireland, because we think that's something that's beginning to happen, and we want to find out about the tax implications for this. Where do they pay their taxes? Different things like that we want to discover for these candidates. It is something that is happening, but it's very new, and we don't have any regulation around it right now, but I do think that regulation will be developed because of a necessity.
Okay, thank you very much, Kathy. We have one more question about about the existence of support measures to hire people other than 50.
Sorry?
Like measures about protected work, support benefits or something like that for people who are older than 50 years old.
Supports here in Ireland for people over 50.
Yeah.
We don't have any special supports other than for people who are in receipt of a job seekers payment in Ireland. If they're over 50, a company will receive a grant to recruit them, but they have to be getting a job seekers payment in Ireland for a certain length of time. Other than that, there's no particular supports because it's illegal to discriminate against people over 50. And I suppose also because our level of employment was particularly low, there was no issue with people over 50 getting into employment in Ireland. So we don't have any additional supports for them.
Okay, there is some people that are asking about bus driver and truck drivers.
Sorry?
I'm sorry, bus drivers and truck drivers. There are people asking about that.
Yeah, there is a demand for bus drivers and for HGV drivers. So with the HGV license, there's quite a demand for those. Now, again, Brexit and COVID-19 are having an impact on the HGV sector, the transport sector. So we don't really know how it's going to impact, but we still think there will be a good demand for workers in that area. A lot of our transport of goods from the EU actually travels through the UK to get to Ireland. If there are tariffs, this may not be possible. We don't know how that's going to be managed, but I'm sure we'll have other connections and corridors that will require drivers.
Thanks so much, Kathy. I want to say that despite Kathy is a very wise and knowledgeable person, we might not have information about all of your topics of interest. So whether you have any question and is it not going to be answered here, please write us an email to our Grupo Mixto address, and we will search for the information later in order to provide you the service.
Yes, and if you have any questions you want to send to me, I will do my best to find the answers for you.
Well, I think it's time to finish this webinar because we are running out of time and Kathy is really busy. So Kathy, thank you so much for your interesting, detailed and enlightening presentation. Hopefully, all this information help our job seekers to make more accurate choices when they find vacancies coming from Irish companies. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. It's really been a pleasure to talk to you all this morning, and it's wonderful to connect with you all and see everybody when we can't see each other in reality. Any questions, please feel free to come back to me and I will try and get the information for you.
Okay, we'll keep in contact.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you very much, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ana, si tienes algo que decir.
Bueno, voy a poner nuevamente la dirección del grupo mixto. Creo que la estáis viendo todos, ¿verdad? Para aquellos que quieran o bien realizar alguna pregunta que se les haya quedado en el tintero, o para solicitar la presentación que nos ha hecho Kathy. Esta es la dirección del grupo mixto y por lo tanto cualquier pregunta diríjanse a la misma que les contestaremos. ¿Vale? Por lo demás, les doy las gracias a todos los que han intervenido, a Kathy personalmente, como al resto de los compañeros, en nombre de la Coordinadora Nacional EURES España, María José Arias, que lamenta mucho no haber podido estar en esta reunión y me transmite sus saludos a todos. Y bueno, como han sido muchas las personas que no han podido acceder porque la plataforma solo admite 100 personas, pues probablemente la repetiremos en algún otro momento y en cualquier caso la grabación pues la tendremos, la pondremos a disposición de todos aquellos que no han podido participar. Por mi parte, nada más, muchas gracias y hasta el próximo encuentro.
Muchas gracias por vuestras preguntas. Ya sabéis, escribidnos sin ningún tipo de reparo. Si algo no os ha quedado claro, si necesitáis información adicional, escribidnos y bueno, pues en un plazo prudente os responderemos a vuestras consultas.
Okay. Bye, Kathy. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Damos por finalizada la sesión, ¿vale? Voy a
Vale.
cerrarla. Venga.
Adiós a todos.
Adiós, adiós.
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 Bye.
Gracias, adiós.